Have you ever felt anxious? Well, if you're human, you have, even if it's just on occasion. Now, do you feel anxious all the time and don't know what to do about it? Then stick with me here. I have something that will help. But first, I want to reassure you that you are not alone. In fact, 42.5 million adults in the US alone have been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder like generalized anxiety or OCD. So what the heck is going on? Why so many people? Well, when you consider the world we live in with so much unpredictability in employment and weather and the economy and violence and drama at your fingertips by way of the internet, the people around you may also be sources of anxiety, but you don't know how to set boundaries with them. You don't know how to say no. So they just keep coming around and causing all these difficulties. The answer is yes, by the way. There are plenty of things outside of yourself that can contribute to feeling anxious, much of it out of your control, right? So let's you and I discuss what is in your control, the roots of the anxiety tree that you can learn to understand a lot better and then take some deliberate steps, which I'm going to show you, to make the roots stronger. You ready? One of the roots is low self-esteem. An example would be you cancel plans with your friends because you don't feel confident enough to be social. An example of something that you could do to counter that would be make a list of 3 accomplishments that you made that day, big or small. A win is a win. Maybe you could look in the mirror each morning and challenge any negative self-talk that you're having. Any thoughts that you're having about what kind of day you're going to have? The next root, I'm sure you're very familiar with, is perfectionism. An example of this could be you spend hours agonizing over a simple email that you want to write. You want to use the right tone because you don't want to offend the person and you have to choose your words perfectly. And you end up spending a day going back and forth on just writing a single email. One way you can counterbalance that is when you notice these perfectionist urges coming up, the thoughts start to arise. Ask yourself, what would be good enough? In some cases, we never learned what good enough means because we were so used to being criticized and being punished and being blown off or brushed aside. So the thing that we need to establish first is, what does good enough even feel like? The next root is comparison. And in our society, with all the marketing and the competitive nature of things, comparison is encouraged, for crying out loud. Think about social media. People sharing how big their muscles are this week, or the cool place they traveled to, or the neat new thing that they bought. It's ripe for comparison, for thinking that somebody else's life is better. They're doing better. They look better than I do. You know what I mean? So one of the things you can do to counter that is start unfollowing people. If when you see their profile or whatever, you disproportionately feel bad about yourself, you can unfollow them, or you could do the work of building some perspective and valuing what you have and who you are, instead of always thinking you're one step behind. The next root, and I'm sure you know this one too, self-criticism. It's the inner critic, the one that's always telling you what you can't do, what you shouldn't do. Maybe you made one minor mistake and you just beat the heck out of yourself all day long because, again, you're supposed to be perfect. One way to counterbalance the self-criticism is with self-compassion. Let's say a buddy of yours is having a rough day and you want to give them some perspective, remind them that there's good in the world, that there's good things about them. What would you say? Except now, say it to yourself. Another root is feeling insecure. At work, maybe you stay silent in meetings and avoid contributing ideas because you feel insecure about your abilities or your knowledge. And socially, you maybe prefer to just listen because you're concerned that comparison, the others won't think you're smart enough to be a part of the conversation. Fear of failure is another route. Maybe you don't apply for a job because you're afraid you're just not going to get the job, or you don't want to do a race for charity because you're afraid you're going to come in last, something like that. And one way to reframe failure, and this is something I'm sure you've heard before, but it takes a lot of work to flip this script. And the reframe of failure is to realize that it is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to be wiser. And I promise you, it is possible to flip that script because I'm able to do it. And I teach my clients how to do it. It takes work, but it's possible. And last but not least, good old imposter syndrome. You downplay your accomplishments, or you say, "Oh, no, it was luck," or "It's not that big deal," because you are concerned you don't belong amongst the people you're with. One way to counter that is to keep track of your skills. And just the other day, I was doing some comparison and I felt really bummed about it, thinking, "Oh, this person has accomplished so much more and they've done so much more." And then later on that day, I remembered just how much I've done. And I realized I've got to turn that into a diagram or something that I can just pull up when I need it to remember just how much I've done. Because with my working memory, I can't hold it all in my head for very long. But if I can see it, I'm not having to have it in my head. I'm just looking to see it. So I recommend, keeping, if you're in a business like me, keep your testimonials. Keep looking at them. Remind yourself of the contribution you're making and just how much you belong where you are, even if you are a niche of one. But I promise you that you're good enough to be wherever you are. So what's the bottom line of all this? Every route I've just described does more than create anxiety. They feed a core belief that's probably the most common belief of all. And that belief is, I'm not good enough. So when you think that or feel it, you are likely experiencing one or more of the preceding routes in action. Maybe you're doing some comparison, or you're afraid that you're going to fail, or you're criticizing yourself. But they ultimately lead to that common feeling, I'm not good enough. So when you're thinking or feeling that, you can dig a little deeper and ask myself, okay, which root or roots are contributing to this? Then you can start doing the work of addressing it specifically. Now, I've already provided some examples of strategies to get these roots to stop feeding you all that muck so that you can begin energizing and empowering yourself with better nutrients for mind, body, soul, emotion. But this is barely the tip of the iceberg. What I'll teach you beyond this can make you virtually unstoppable. Now, I know how to pinpoint exactly where to start with all this and exactly what to do so that you can know what it's like to feel more confident, resilient, and lovable. So message me and we can talk about how you and I can accomplish this together. Oh, one last thing. Thanks for being you.